Hello everybody, this is another Hot Wheels Collector video. Today we are looking at the 94 Bugatti EB110 Super Sport. Now this car features in the 2022 J case and also features in the Hot Wheels Turbo set for 2022, and it is car number 5 out of 10 in that set. This car is also car number 65 out of 250 for 2022. I'll quickly mention where I actually found this car then. So I found this car in a pretty local Poundstrecher or bargain buys store. If you're new to the channel, you might not know this, but Bargain Buys and Poundstrecher are the same store under a different name. The prices are the same, the goods they sell are the same. They're just kind of rebranded essentially to try and appeal to a wider market of people. But yes, I was really happy to find this thing. It was one of them cars where I had one already. I have it in yellow, but I wasn't particularly a big fan of the colour choice on it. And I think this one just looks a little bit more period correct, but also it just looks a bit nicer and it has more of a factory fresh look to it. I think it's the wheel choice on this thing that just makes it look a lot better in my opinion. But anyways, let me give you some facts about the real life car. So this car had a 3.5 litre quad turbo V12 engine which produced 553 horsepower and 611 newton meters of torque, converting to 451 pound-feet of torque. This car was also all-wheel drive and had a 0 to 60 time in 3.1 seconds. We do know that all-wheel drive cars do just hook up a bit better on the tarmac, so they do just have quite a lot more grip, so you would expect 0 to 60 times on all-wheel drive cars to be faster than front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive cars. This car also had a 6-speed manual transmission, and only about 134 of these cars were made, including the prototypes of this thing. So the amount of EB110s which were actually sold would be less than 134, since that is including the prototypes. This car also had a top speed of 221 miles per hour, which converts to 355 kilometers per hour. And now this car has a value of $3.5 million, and that converts to about £2.9 million. Definitely not a cheap car, but it is quite rare. When this car was new though, it cost only $500,000, and that is equivalent to £411,000 in 1994. So if you bought this car back then, let's just say you would have made a ton of money and this would have been a very wise investment. But anyways, that is it for the facts about this car. Now let's move on to my actual showcase of the Hot Wheels model. Alright, so kicking off this showcase then, we'll first of all take a look at the side of this car, and I'll first of all mention the wheel choice on this thing. So this car is rolling on the Aerodisc wheels, which have been painted in chrome. I'm actually quite a big fan of these wheels, even though a lot of people don't like them. I actually think they suit this car quite nicely, especially when they have been done in chrome like this. As for the actual colour of the rest of the car then, it's all painted in this metallic silver colour. There is no sample work featuring on the side of this car, but that's nothing to worry about because there has actually already been a premium release of this car in the 2022 Exotic Envy set in blue, a glossy blue colour by the way. And honestly, they haven't missed much detail on this car anyway. There's not much detail that does feature on the side of this car that would need to be tampered. The only thing which really is missing detail here, which does still feature in the metal casting though, is the side marker or side indicator or turn signal light of this car. And onto the rest of the metal casting then, we do have this nice and large side vent featuring here. It is not an actual shut off or hole in the metal casting, instead it's just an indentation. We also do have the door handle of this car featuring in the metal casting, as well as a fender vent also featuring in the metal casting. I will also quickly mention that the windows on this car are wound up, and I will also mention that there are even more vents featuring in the metal casting on the side of this thing. We have 5 more circular shaped ones featuring just behind the front window of this car, as well as another one featuring behind the front window of this car. Lots and lots of vents on this thing, but that is accurate to the real life car. And the final vent which we do see, I can't really describe its position, but it does feature here, and I will have an arrow pointing to it so you know what I'm talking about, but it's in a very odd position which most cars don't have, but this EB110 does, since it's got quite a quirky and weird looking design which is quite bold to be entirely honest. I'm pretty sure they went for this design to be as aerodynamic as possible. But anyways, that is it for the side of this thing. Now let's move on to the front of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the front of this car then, we do not receive any tamper work on the actual front bumper of this car, but we do have some detail in the metal casting. So first of all, I'll mention that the iconic front grille of this car does actually feature on this car. It's quite small compared to more modern Bugattis like the Veyron and the Chiron, but it is still there. It's kind of like a half oval shape. We also do have vents to the left and to the right of that, also featuring the metal casting, And we also do have two smaller vents, one to the left and one to the right of the main grille of this car, featuring the metal casting as well. None of these are actual holes in the metal casting or shut-offs, they are all just indentations. And I will also mention that the front splitter of this car is actually created through the metal, which creates the rest of the body of this car. It is not created through the black base plastic. The only piece of tamper work which actually is visible from this position is the Bugatti badge, featuring here, done in a mixture of white and red tampo, accurate to the real life Bugatti. However, on this Hot Wheels model, the badge is much larger than the real life car. That is just to make it visible. If it was as small as the real life car, like you can see on the card art here, you wouldn't be able to see it. It would just be a tiny little red dot. So they have enlarged it quite a lot, but I am quite happy that they did do that, instead of just ignoring that detail totally. Very nice to see that there from the Hot Wheels team, even though it's not super accurate to the real life car. Anyways, that is it for the front of this thing. Now let's move on to the next side of this car. Alright, so moving on to the next side of this car then, it is the exact same as the previous side, so I'm not going to bore you here by going through everything all over again, but you can obviously pause the video here and have a look for yourself if you're looking for something specific. If not, let's move straight onto the rear of this car. Alright, so now onto the rear of this car then, we do have quite a decent amount of detail here as well, in terms of tamper work, but also the metal casting as well as plastic usage. So first of all, we do have the rear lights of this car being done in a realistic look. Those rear lights do include the indicator or turn signal lights, the brake lights, as well as the reverse lights. The indicator or turn signal lights on this car have been done in orange tampo, as you would expect. We also do have the brake lights on this car being done in red tampo, once again, as you would expect. And we finally do have the reverse lights of this car being done in white tampo, once again, as you would expect. Nice bit of detail there. We also do have the rear license plate of this car being tampoed on here in white, which also does receive a black outline. And then we finally do have the Ryu Asada logo being done in black. That is because he is the designer of this car. He designed it before he sadly passed away a few years back. That is it for the tamper work on the rear of this thing, however the detail does not stop here. We first of all do have some more vents featuring in the metal casting on the rear of this thing. Once again, those are not actual holes in the casting, instead they're just indentations. Unfortunately, it makes it look a little bit less realistic. However, with this grey colour, it doesn't look quite as bad as with the yellow colour. With the yellow colour, it was a lot more obvious in my opinion that they were lacking detail. We also do have the entire license plate holder section of this car also featuring in the metal casting here as well. And finally, I'll mention that the entire diffuser of this car is created through the black base plastic, and that diffuser does include the dual exit exhaust of this car. Very nice to see them featuring there. We also do have the lower light to this car, I believe it's a reflector, featuring here in the black base plastic as well. And one thing I almost forgot to mention somehow, because it's a large thing, is the gigantic spoiler which features on this casting, and that is accurate to the real life car. It is in the metal casting, it is not created through plastic like some Hot Wheels cars are. You can see it from a nice angle here. We'll also be able to see it from the top as well, so you get different views of this spoiler. You've already seen the view of the spoiler from the side. Anyways, that is it for the rear of this thing. Now let's move on to the top of this car. Alright, so moving on to the top of this car then, there is no extra detail in terms of tamper work, but we do have some more detail in terms of plastic usage, but also in terms of the metal casting. First of all, you can see the large spoiler of this car from the top view. You can also see through the rear window of this car the engine which powers this car, obviously being that V12 which we've already mentioned, which is quad turboed. You can also see some more vents featuring on the top of this car. I've already mentioned them previously when we were talking about the side of this car, but you can see them a little bit better from this angle and a little bit more close up. I will also mention that the interior plastic of this car is black. I will also mention that unfortunately this car does not feature any windshield wipers. That is a small detail which is missing, however it is unfortunate to not see that detail featuring on this car. It kind of makes the car feel a little bit incomplete in my opinion, especially once you notice it's not there. Finally, taking a look at the front section of the top of this car then, there's not a whole lot more detail that I haven't already mentioned, but the one thing that I definitely haven't mentioned is the front headlights of this car are created through the window plastic. Quite an interesting detail there, but I'm happy they've done it because it means that the headlights do receive detail. Even though if they hadn't been created through the window plastic, they still probably would have received detail, since this car does receive a rear tampo print press as well as a top tampo print press, which creates the Bugatti badge. I will also mention the little vents which feature next to the headlights, which also do feature on the real life car as well. Featuring in the metal casting, very nice detail there, even though they are not an actual hole or shut off in the metal casting, they are just an indentation. Anyways, that is it for the top of this thing, and that is also it for my showcase of this thing. So now let's move on to my final thoughts and review on this car. Alright, so now it's time for my final thoughts and review on this car. I think it's really nice to see the Hot Wheels team doing this car and showing some appreciation to it. I think they've done a fantastic job on representing it. There are a few things which I'm not keen on about this car though. This car does not have any wing mirrors in the metal casting. That is unfortunate, and it will affect my score at the end. And also, this car does not have any windshield wipers. Again, that will affect my score at the end, even though the real life car does actually have them. So again, it's just a detail which is missing. I think the wing mirrors are a bigger deal though, because it just makes the car look a little bit incomplete to me. I was actually first introduced to this car by Forza Horizon. I remember it was one of the fastest cars in that game, and ever since I've just quite liked the car. I know a lot of people associate this car with that blue colour, which most of them came in, but silver was a manufacturer colour as well. So it was a little bit less popular though. Most of them I believe were done in blue. I quite like this grey though. I think it does look fantastic. And yeah, this car was made way before Bugatti had like a massive name for themselves. Back when this thing was made, they were quite an obscure brand that not a lot of people had heard of. But ever since the Veyron released and was the fastest car in the world, Bugatti have just been a name that most people in the world will know. Whether they know what their brand actually make or whether they've just heard of the name, I think it's pretty fair to say that at least 90% of the population have heard of them. And rightfully so, this brand makes some really awesome cars, albeit they are very expensive nowadays compared to the price of this thing when it was new. But they are absolutely cars that we don't really see from many other brands at all. But anyways, that does lead me on my score out of 10 for this thing. So one of this car out of 10, it is going to be receiving a very well-deserved 9 out of 10. It is great for a mainline. I'm really happy to see this car executed in such a way. I wasn't too keen on the yellow version of the car. I can make a review on that later if you guys would like it. And here is the yellow one just for reference. Let me know in the comments below if that is something that you'd be interested in. But this thing is just fantastic. Yeah, the yellow one wasn't quite for me. Some people might like it more than this thing. But yeah, this thing just looks fantastic in my eyes. I know quite a lot of people might not like the aero disc wheels on it, but I quite like the aero disc wheels, especially when they are done in chrome like this. This thing just looks fantastic in my eyes. Really, really impressed with this thing. I am loving it. So anyways, that is it for this video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and you can also press that notification bell so you do not miss any new uploads. Remember, you can also share this video with any friends, family, or any groups who may be interested. But remember, don't feel pressured if you don't feel like you have anybody who may be interested. You watching this video all the way to the end means so much to me, and I really do thank you for making it all the way up until this point. But anyways, that is it for this video, so I hope you guys do enjoy. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye everyone.